"Congratulations, Mom. Now you live on my husband's property. If you try to get smart, you're out on the street." My own daughter Sarah's words echoed in my ears endlessly as my hands trembled, holding the deed to the estate. The $2 million property my father had left me as an inheritance was registered in the name of Julian, my son-in-law. My son-in-law, that man who had entered my house with smiles and sweet words, now looked at me with contempt from the armchair that used to belong to my late husband. Laughing with that cruel laugh I had never heard before, he added, "You're not in charge of anything anymore. You're going to serve us." But in that moment, as I felt the world crumbling beneath my feet, something inside me refused to break completely. They didn't know that he who laughs last laughs best. And I, Eleanor, 65 years old, a widow, and apparently defeated, had a plan they couldn't even imagine. It all began 6 months ago when my father passed away. He had been a hard-working man who built this estate with his own hands, brick by brick, sacrifice after sacrifice. I took care of him during his final years as his illness slowly consumed him. Every morning, I woke up before dawn to make him breakfast exactly the way he liked it: toast with butter, black coffee with no sugar, and fresh fruit. I would sit by his side while he ate, watching how his wrinkled hands trembled holding the cup. Dad used to tell me, "Eleanor, this land is yours. Take care of it like I did. Don't ever let anyone take it from you." I would nod, my eyes filled with tears, promising him I would. I never imagined that promise would become the hardest battle of my life. After his funeral, everything seemed to move too fast. The lawyers, the papers, the endless signatures. I was submerged in grief, barely able to think clearly. Sarah, my only daughter, was by my side during those days, or so I thought. She hugged me, told me everything would be okay, that she would help me with all the procedures. Julian, her husband, also acted supportive. He offered to take me to the government offices, help me organize the documents, and handle the paperwork I didn't understand well. I trusted them. I trusted them because they were my family, because I thought a daughter's love for her mother was unbreakable. How wrong I was. The estate was beautiful. It had 25 acres of fertile land, a main house with 6 large bedrooms, stables, gardens my father had cultivated with devotion, and a spectacular view of the mountains. It was valued at $2 million according to the official appraisal, but to me it was priceless. It was my home, my history, my legacy. When Sarah suggested that she and Julian move in with me, it felt like a blessing. I had been living alone since my husband died 3 years ago, and the loneliness weighed on my shoulders like an invisible burden. Having my daughter close, hearing laughter in the house, preparing meals for more than one person, filled me with joy. I accepted without hesitation. I prepared the largest bedroom for them, filled the closet with new sheets, and put fresh flowers on the nightstand. I wanted them to feel welcome, to know that this house was also theirs. The first few months were pleasant. Julian would get up early, help with minor repairs on the property, fix the fences, paint the exterior walls, prune the trees. I thought, my daughter is so lucky to have such a hard-working, attentive husband. Sarah would cook with me in the afternoons, and together we'd make the recipes my mother had taught me. We talked about everything about their plans to have children one day, about memories from when she was little, about how proud her grandfather would be to see her so happy. I felt complete again. The sadness from Dad's death was still there, dormant, but having my family close made it more bearable. Julian started making suggestions about managing the estate. He said I shouldn't worry so much about the taxes, the maintenance, the legal issues, that he could take care of all that so I could rest and enjoy my golden years. "It sounds nice when you put it that way," he told me one afternoon as we drank lemonade on the porch. "You've worked hard enough your whole life. Now you deserve to rest. Let me handle the boring details." I looked at him with gratitude, thinking he was a considerate son-in-law, a man who genuinely cared about my well-being. I signed the powers of attorney he asked for, authorizations so he could run errands in my name, pay bills, manage documents, all under the supervision and approval of Sarah, who assured me it was for the best, that this way I wouldn't have to go to offices and waste time in endless lines. But there were signs. Small signs I ignored because I didn't want to see the truth. Julian started speaking with a different tone when referring to the property. He would say our farm instead of your farm. He made decisions without consulting me. He sold 3 cows that Dad had raised with such care, hired new workers, and fired Edward, the caretaker who had been with us for 20 years. When I asked why he'd done that without telling me, he replied with a tense smile. "It's just that Edward is too old, Eleanor. We need younger, more efficient people. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing." His tone allowed no reply, and I fell silent, feeling an uneasiness I couldn't name at the time. Sarah changed, too. She became distant, less affectionate. We didn't cook together anymore. She spent hours locked in her room or went out with Julian without telling me where they were going. When I tried to talk to her, she'd answer in monosyllables, hurriedly, as if my presence bothered her. "Mom, don't start," she'd say when I asked if everything was okay. "I'm busy." And I swallowed my words, my confusion, the sadness of feeling I was losing my daughter without understanding why. Then that day came, the day my world fell apart completely. Julian walked into the living room with a manila envelope in his hand. His expression was serious, almost solemn. "Eleanor, I need you to see this," he said, handing me the envelope. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside were the property deed documents. I read them once, twice, 3 times, unable to believe it. The estate, my estate. The land my father left me was registered in the name of Julian Hayes. My name was nowhere to be found. "This has to be a mistake," I said, my voice breaking. "It has to be a mistake, Julian." He looked at me with a cold smile, a smile I had never seen on his face before. "It's no mistake, Eleanor. The property is mine now. You signed everything necessary months ago. Remember the powers of attorney, the authorizations? Well, I made sure everything was legally put under my name." I felt the floor disappear from under me. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. "This can't be real," I whispered, looking at the documents over and over, searching for any sign that this was a nightmare I would soon wake up from. But it wasn't a dream. The official seals, the signatures, the stamps, it was all authentic. "Julian, how could you do this?" I stammered, feeling tears start to roll down my cheeks. He shrugged indifferently, as if we were talking about the weather. "It was easy, Eleanor. Very easy. You trusted me. You signed everything I put in front of you without reading, without asking. A naive old woman, that's what you are." His words hit me like slaps. Naive old woman. I repeated those words in my mind, feeling them stab into my chest like sharp knives. "Sarah," I shouted, calling my daughter desperately. "Sarah, please come here." She appeared in the doorway, arms crossed and a cold expression on her face. "Mom, we already know you found out," she said in a tone I'd never heard. "So save the drama." I looked at her, unable to believe what I was hearing. "You knew?" I asked, my voice trembling. "You knew what he was doing?" She nodded with a mocking smile. "Of course I knew, Mom. It was my idea from the beginning. You think Julian married me for love? Please. He married me to get to you and this property. And I agreed because I'm tired of living on scraps, waiting for you to die so I can inherit something. So we decided to speed things up. My daughter's words destroyed me more than anything else. I felt as if my heart had been ripped from my chest. "Sarah, how can you say that?" I murmured. "I gave you everything. I always loved you. I took care of you." She let out a bitter laugh. "Gave me everything?" "Mom, you gave me a mediocre life on this forgotten farm. While my friends were traveling through Europe, I was stuck here feeding chickens. While they had designer clothes, I wore old dresses you sewed yourself. You were always cheap, always saving every penny. Saving it for what? To die and leave me the leftovers. Well, no more. Now Julian and I are in control, and you're going to do exactly what we tell you." Julian stepped toward me with slow, calculated steps. He bent down until his face was level with mine and said in an icy voice, "Listen closely, Eleanor. From now on, things are going to change. This is my property, my house. You live here out of my generosity, and if you want to keep a roof over your head, you'll follow my rules. You will cook. You will clean. You will wash our clothes. You will serve us, like the maid you now are. And if you try to get smart, if you try to go to the police or get help, I swear I'll throw you out on the street with nothing. Let's see how long you last out there at your age, with no money, no family, no one will believe you, no one will help you. The papers are in order, everything is legal, so get used to your new life. I stood there, paralyzed, unable to speak. I looked at Sarah, searching for any trace of the sweet girl I had raised, of the daughter who hugged me when she had nightmares, of the young woman who told me how much she loved me. But that person was gone. In her place was a woman who looked at me with coldness, with resentment, with a contempt that chilled my blood. Julian stepped back and pointed toward the kitchen. Now, go make dinner. We want roast chicken with potatoes, and have it ready in 1 hour. Move. My legs were trembling so much I could barely stand, but I obeyed. I walked to the kitchen, feeling their eyes fixed on my back, feeling my dignity crumble with every step. That night, while I cooked, tears fell onto the cutting board, mixing with the vegetables I was chopping. My hands moved on autopilot, peeling potatoes, seasoning the chicken, turning on the oven. But my mind was somewhere else, remembering the sacrifices I had made for Sarah. I remembered the sleepless nights when she was a baby, crying with a fever. The times I skipped meals so she could have enough. The extra jobs I took cleaning other people's houses, sewing clothes, washing floors, to pay for her school, her books, her uniforms. All of that, for what? For her to look at me now as if I were garbage. I served dinner on the dining room table. Julian and Sarah sat like royalty while I stood by waiting for orders. The food is cold, Julian said after one bite. Take it back and heat it up properly. And bring me a beer. I obeyed without a word. I took his plate, went back to the kitchen, heated it in the oven, and served him his beer. When I returned, Sarah looked at me, annoyed. Mom, you look like a statue standing there. Go to the kitchen and eat in there. We don't want to look at you while we eat. I retreated, feeling something inside me break definitively. The following days were hell. Julian woke me up at 5 in the morning, pounding on my bedroom door. Get up, lazybones, he'd shout. There's a lot to do. I would get up, my body aching, my joints stiff, my bones tired. At 65 years old, every movement was an effort, but I had no choice. I cleaned the whole house, mopped the floors, dusted the furniture, washed the bathrooms. Then I'd prepare their breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, fresh squeezed orange juice, coffee. They ate without even looking at me, without a thank you, without a gesture of acknowledgement. I ate the leftovers in the kitchen, standing by the sink. Sarah had become even crueler than Julian. She gave me orders constantly. Wash my clothes, iron my dresses, clean my room, organize my closet. And I want it spotless, Mom, because if I find a single mistake, you'll do it all over again. Sometimes I tried to talk to her, to remind her of the good times we had shared. Sarah, my daughter, please. I'd say with a pleading voice, we can talk, we can fix this. She cut me off immediately. We have nothing to talk about. You're not my mother anymore. You're my maid. So shut up and do your job. One afternoon, while I was washing clothes on the patio, I heard Julian on the phone. He was on the porch, smoking a cigarette, and didn't realize I could hear him. Yeah, it all went perfectly, he said with a satisfied tone. The old woman fell for it like a fool. Now the property is mine, and I can do whatever I want with it. I'm thinking of selling off a few acres. I have an interested buyer offering $300,000. Imagine that. Easy money. And the best part is, it's completely legal. He paused, listening to the person on the other end. Then he laughed. No, she won't do anything. I've got her threatened. She knows if she opens her mouth, I'll throw her out. Besides, who's going to believe her? She's an old woman with no education, no resources. No one will pay her any mind. I felt rage begin to boil inside me. Rage against Julian, against Sarah, against myself for being so blind, so trusting. But along with the rage, I felt something else. Determination. I wasn't going to stand by and watch them destroy my father's legacy. I wasn't going to let them treat me like trash. I had to find a way to get back what was mine. But I had to be smart. If I acted impulsively, if I showed open resistance, Julian would follow through on his threat. I needed a plan. I needed help, and I knew exactly who to turn to. That night, after Julian and Sarah went to sleep, I lay awake in my small room. I had been relegated to the utility room, a tiny space with a narrow bed, an old nightstand, and a small window that barely let in any light. I thought of Gregory, my father's lawyer. He had been at the funeral, had given me his condolences, and had told me that if I ever needed legal help, I shouldn't hesitate to find him. At the time, I didn't think I'd need him. Now, he was my only hope. The problem was how to contact Gregory without Julian and Sarah finding out. They controlled everything. They had taken my cell phone away the second day after the revelation. "You don't need to talk to anyone," Julian had said, snatching it from my hands. I couldn't leave the estate without permission. The keys to the main gate were always with Julian. I felt like a prisoner in my own home, the land where I was born, where I grew up, where I thought I would spend my final years in peace. But I wasn't going to give up. I couldn't give up. During the day, I feigned submission. I completed every task they assigned me without protest, without raising my eyes. I cooked, cleaned, washed, ironed. I bit my tongue when Julian insulted me, when Sarah treated me with disdain. I swallowed my pride, my pain, my humiliation. But at night, when they slept, I thought. I planned. I watched every detail of their routines. Julian left every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, saying he had business meetings. On Wednesdays, Sarah went to the salon in town. She spent hours there, getting her nails done, her hair, facial treatments. She was spending money that I had saved with such sacrifice, and now she squandered it without a second thought. One morning, while cleaning the office Julian had set up in what used to be my father's study, I found something. Among the messy papers on the desk, there was an opened envelope. I looked toward the door, making sure no one was coming. With trembling hands, I took the envelope and read its contents. It was a letter from a bank confirming the opening of a $500,000 line of credit using the estate as collateral. $500,000. Julian was putting my property into debt. If he didn't pay that debt, the bank could foreclose and take everything. Panic washed over me, but I quickly controlled it. I pulled out my old cell phone, which I had hidden under my mattress. I'd retrieved it one night, while they were fast asleep, and took pictures of all the documents I could find. The bank letter, contracts, invoices, anything that looked important. That afternoon, Sarah announced she was going into town. "I need to buy new clothes," she said, looking at herself in the living room mirror. "I don't like this beige dress anymore. I want something more elegant, more expensive." Julian gave her a credit card. "Buy whatever you want, my love," he said, kissing her forehead. "We can afford these luxuries now." I watched them from the kitchen, pretending to be busy washing the breakfast dishes. Sarah left in the car that used to be mine, a car my husband had given me years ago. Now she used it as if it had always been hers. As soon as Sarah left, Julian called me. "Eleanor, come here." I went to the living room, where he was lying on the sofa, watching television with a beer in his hand. "I'm leaving in an hour," he said without looking at me. "I want you to make enchiladas for dinner, and I want them ready when I get back. No excuses." I nodded silently. He got up, went to his room, and I heard the sound of the shower. This was my opportunity. I had an hour, maybe a little more. I ran to my room, grabbed the phone, and looked up Gregory's number. I had saved it months ago in my old address book. I dialed with trembling fingers. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. "Please, pick up," I whispered. "Please." "Hello," a calm, deep voice finally answered. "Gregory, it's me, Eleanor," I said, almost breathless. "Arthur's daughter." There was a brief silence. "Eleanor, what a surprise," he said in a friendly tone. "How are you?" "I'm not okay, Gregory," I replied, feeling tears threatening to spill. "I need your help, urgently." Something in my voice must have alerted him, because his tone changed immediately. "What happened? Tell me." I explained everything as quickly as I could. I told him about Julian, about the forged documents, about how the property was now registered in his name, about the threats, about how they were holding me practically prisoner. Gregory listened in silence, only interrupting occasionally to ask a specific question. When I finished, he sighed deeply. "Eleanor, this is very serious," he said. "This is fraud, misappropriation, possibly forgery of documents. I need to see every paper you can get. I need evidence." I told him I had taken pictures of some documents. "Perfect," he said. "Text them to me, right now. And listen to me, Eleanor. Don't show them you suspect anything. Keep acting as you have been submissive, obedient. It's important they don't know you're seeking help. In the meantime, I'm going to investigate. I'll check the public records. I'll see what we can do legally. But I need time. Can you hold on a little longer?" I assured him I could, that I would do whatever it took. "Thank you, Gregory," I said, my voice breaking. "Thank you for believing me." "I always believed in you, Eleanor," he replied. "Your father was my best friend, and I know you are an honorable woman. We are going to fix this, I promise you." I hung up just in time. I heard Julian's footsteps coming down the stairs. I quickly hid the phone under my mattress and left the room, trying to control my rapid breathing and my heart, which was pounding like a drum. Julian walked past me without a word, took the keys to his truck, and left. I heard the engine start, the sound of the tires on the gravel path. Only then did I allow myself to exhale. I had taken the first step. Now I just needed to keep going, carefully, intelligently. The following days were the hardest. I had to act as if nothing had changed. Serve breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Clean every corner of the house. Endure the insults, the humiliations, the dismissive looks. But now, there was something different inside me. I had hope. I knew Gregory was working on my case, that I wasn't completely alone. That gave me the strength to go on. Julian started having visitors, men in suits who arrived in luxury cars. They would lock themselves in the office for hours, arguing in low voices. I served them coffee, remained silent, trying to overhear fragments of conversation. One afternoon I heard something that chilled my blood. "We're talking $1,200,000 for the whole property," one of the men said. "It's a fair offer considering the current market." Julian replied, "I need to think about it. It's a big decision." He wanted to sell the entire estate. He wanted to get rid of my father's entire legacy, my memories, my history, and pocket the money. I couldn't sleep that night. I tossed and turned, distressed, wondering if Gregory could do something in time. The next day, I seized a moment when Sarah went for a walk in the gardens to call him again. Gregory answered immediately. "Eleanor, I'm glad you called. I have news." My heart sped up. "What did you find?" I asked. "I've been reviewing everything," he said in a serious tone, "and there are indeed serious irregularities in the documents. The signatures on some of the powers of attorney don't perfectly match your registered signature. Furthermore, I found that Julian has a record. This isn't the first time he's done something like this. 5 years ago, he was involved in a similar case in another state. He married a widow, took her property, and disappeared. The case never went to trial because the woman dropped the charges out of fear. But it's all documented." I felt a mix of relief and horror. Relief because there was evidence that could help me. Horror because I realized Julian was a professional criminal, a predator who preyed on vulnerable women, and my own daughter was his accomplice. "What can we do?" I asked. Gregory paused. "We are going to file a formal complaint for fraud," he said. "We'll request an asset freeze on the property to prevent him from selling it. And we'll ask for a full investigation into how these transfers were made. But Eleanor, I need more proof. I need recordings of Julian admitting what he did. I need anything that shows he threatened you, that he coerced you. Can you do that?" I said yes, that I would find a way. Getting those recordings was risky, but I had no choice. I used my old phone, keeping it in my apron pocket, activating the recorder whenever Julian or Sarah spoke to me. I recorded their insults, their threats, their conversations where they openly discussed selling the property. One night, Julian was particularly drunk. He'd been drinking whiskey all afternoon. He called me into the living room. "Get over here, you useless old woman," he yelled. I approached, the recorder active, hidden in my pocket. "You know the best part of all this?" he said, laughing. You're so stupid you signed your own death warrant. You thought I loved you. Loved your daughter? Please. Sarah is just a means to an end. And you were the golden goose. Well, were. Now you're just a burden. I recorded every word. His drunken confession, his dismissive laughter, the way he admitted without shame that it had all been a plan from the beginning. When he finished speaking, he ordered me to serve him more whiskey. I obeyed with trembling hands, bringing him the bottle and a clean glass. He didn't even look at me. He just snatched the bottle and continued drinking while watching television. I returned to the kitchen, my heart pounding so hard I feared he could hear it. I checked the recording. It was perfect, clear, crisp, and incriminating. That same night, I sent it to Gregory, along with all the others I had collected over the past few days. Gregory called me early the next morning, while Julian was still sleeping off the previous night's drinking. "Eleanor, this is pure gold," he said, his voice excited. "With these recordings, we have enough to press criminal charges. I'm contacting the district attorney's office today, but I need you to be prepared. When we file the complaint, things will move fast. There will likely be an arrest warrant. Julian will know it was you who turned him in. Do you have a safe place to stay?" I told him I had no one else. My only family was Sarah, and she had betrayed me. Gregory thought for a moment. "Okay," he said. "I'll make arrangements. I have a cabin outside of town. No one uses it. You can stay there while this all gets sorted out. But first, I need you to get out of that house without raising suspicion. Can you do it?" I spent the whole day thinking about how to escape. Julian and Sarah watched me constantly. I couldn't just grab my things and leave. I needed an excuse, an opportunity. That opportunity came 2 days later. Sarah announced at breakfast that she and Julian were going to the city to meet with the potential buyers of the estate. "We'll be gone all day," she said, spreading jam on her toast. "We might even spend the night there if the negotiations run long. You stay here and make sure everything is clean when we get back. And don't even think about leaving." My heart leaped. This was my chance. That morning I watched them leave. Julian driving his truck, Sarah beside him, dressed up in an ivory-colored dress that had probably cost hundreds of dollars. As soon as they disappeared down the dirt road, I ran to my room. I grabbed a small suitcase and packed only the essentials. Some clothes, personal documents, the few photographs I had of my father, my late husband, and Sarah when she was a child. I couldn't take much. I called Gregory. "They're gone," I said, breathless. "I'm ready." "Perfect," he replied. "I'm on my way. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Wait near the main gate." Those 30 minutes were an eternity. I paced back and forth, checking the window every few seconds, terrified that Julian would come back, that he had forgotten something, that he would discover my plan. But he didn't appear. Finally, I saw Gregory's car approaching on the road. I grabbed my suitcase, closed the door of the house that had been my home my entire life, and walked toward the gate. Gregory got out of the car and helped me with the suitcase. "Are you okay?" he asked, looking at me with concern. I nodded, though I felt my whole body trembling. "I'm okay," I said. "Now, I'm okay." Gregory's cabin was small but cozy. It had one bedroom, a tiny kitchen, a bathroom, and a living room with a stone fireplace. "It's fully stocked," he told me as he showed me around. "There's food in the pantry, firewood for the fireplace. Stay here as long as you need. Nobody knows about this place except me. You'll be safe." I thanked him with tears in my eyes. "I don't know how to repay you for everything you're doing for me, Gregory," I said. He put a hand on my shoulder. "Your father helped me when I needed it most," he replied. "When my wife was sick and we didn't have money for the treatments, he lent it to us, no questions asked. I was never able to repay him for that favor. Now I can, by helping you. Besides, this isn't just a favor, Eleanor. This is justice, and we're going to make sure it's served." That night, I slept for the first time in weeks without fear, without dreading Julian pounding on my door at dawn, demanding I get up, without having to serve people who despised me. The bed was comfortable, the sheets smelled like lavender, and the silence of the night, broken only by the chirping of crickets, was comforting. But even though my body was resting, my mind couldn't stop thinking about what was to come, about the legal battle ahead, about the possibility of getting my estate back, about Sarah and how she had come to hate me so much. Gregory filed the formal complaint the next day. He called me in the afternoon to give me the news. The DA's office took the case, he said. They're very interested, especially after reviewing Julian's record. They're going to issue an arrest warrant for fraud, forgery, and extortion. They also requested an immediate freeze on all assets related to the estate. That means Julian won't be able to sell anything until the case is resolved. I felt immense relief. Thank God, I whispered. Thank God. But Gregory warned me there was still a long road ahead. This is just the beginning, Eleanor, he said. The legal process can take months. Julian will hire lawyers. He'll try to fight this. But we have solid evidence. You just need to be patient. 2 days later, Gregory called with urgent news. They arrested Julian, he said, this morning. He went to the county registrar's office to try and complete the sale, and the police were waiting for him. He's in custody now. Sarah is also being investigated as an accomplice. I felt a strange mix of emotions, relief that he was finally paying for what he'd done, but also a deep sadness that my own daughter was involved in all of this. What's going to happen to Sarah? I asked weakly. Gregory sighed. It depends on how much she's willing to cooperate, he replied. If she testifies against Julian, if she admits her involvement, it's possible she'll receive a reduced sentence. But that's up to her. Weeks passed. I stayed in the cabin, reading, cooking, walking in the nearby woods, trying to keep my mind busy. Gregory visited me regularly, bringing supplies, updates on the case, and words of encouragement. He told me Julian had hired an expensive lawyer who was trying to argue that all the documents were legitimate, that I had signed voluntarily. But those recordings you got destroy that defense, Gregory said with a smile. They have no way of explaining his own confessions. One afternoon, Gregory arrived with unexpected news. Sarah wants to see you, he said. She's in jail, awaiting her preliminary hearing. She specifically asked me to ask you if you'd be willing to visit her. My first instinct was to say no. After everything she had done to me, after the humiliation, the cruelty, the betrayal, I owed her nothing. But something inside me, a small part that still remembered the little girl I had raised, the daughter I once loved, made me hesitate. What does she want? I asked. I don't know, Gregory replied. She just said she needs to talk to you. I thought for a long time. Finally, I nodded. I'll go, I said. But I want you to come with me. The jail was a cold, sterile place, full of metal doors and guards with stern expressions. They took me to a small visiting room with a metal table and 2 chairs. I sat waiting, my hands clasped on the table, feeling nerves gnaw at my stomach. Then they brought Sarah in. She looked different. No makeup, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, dressed in the orange prison uniform. She looked younger, more vulnerable. She sat across from me, not meeting my gaze. There was a long, uncomfortable silence. Finally, she spoke. Mom, she whispered, her voice breaking. I'm sorry. Those 2 words hit me harder than I expected. I looked at her, not knowing what to say. I'm so sorry, she continued, tears beginning to roll down her cheeks. I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness. I know what I did is unforgivable. But I needed to tell you. I needed you to know that I regret everything. I took a deep breath, trying to control the emotions threatening to overwhelm me. Why, Sarah? I finally asked. Why did you do this to me? She wiped her tears with the back of her hand. Because I was stupid, she replied. Because I let Julian fill my head with lies. He convinced me that you were selfish, that you were denying us the life we deserved. He made me believe we were justified in taking what was rightfully ours. But I see the truth now, Mom. Julian never loved me. He just used me to get to you and to the estate. And I was so blind, so greedy, that I didn't see it until it was too late. I listened to her words, feeling each one stab into my heart like glass splinters. Part of me wanted to believe her, wanted to think she truly regretted it. But another part, the part that had suffered weeks of humiliation and abuse, remained cautious, mistrustful. How can I believe you, Sarah? I asked. After everything that happened, how do I know this isn't just another manipulation? She looked up, and I saw something in her eyes I hadn't seen in months. genuine pain, real remorse. "You don't have to believe me," she said, her voice trembling. "I understand if you never forgive me, but I had to try. I had to tell you that the person who treated you like that wasn't me. Or maybe it was me, but the worst version of myself. The version that let greed and ambition destroy the only thing that really mattered." I was silent for a long moment, watching her. I saw traces of the girl who used to run through the fields of the estate, who asked me to tell her stories before bed, who hugged me when she was afraid of thunderstorms. But I also saw the woman who had called me her maid, who had allowed her husband to treat me like garbage, who had conspired to steal everything from me. "What do you want from me, Sarah?" I asked finally. She swallowed hard. "My lawyer says that if I testify against Julian, if I tell them everything I know about his plans, my charges could be reduced," she replied. "But I don't want to do it just for that. I want to do it because it's the right thing to do. I want to help you get back what's yours, Mom. I want to try, even just a little, to mend the damage I caused." I looked at Gregory, who had remained silent by the door. He nodded slightly, letting me know that Sarah's testimony would be valuable to the case. I took a deep breath. "If you really want to help," I said firmly, "then tell the whole truth. Don't hide anything. And understand that this doesn't erase what you did. It doesn't mean everything goes back to the way it was." Sarah nodded quickly. "I know, Mom. I know. I just want the chance to show you that I can change, that I can be better." The visit ended shortly after. When I left the jail, I felt emotionally exhausted. Gregory drove me back to the cabin in silence, respecting my need to process everything that had happened. The following days were filled with intense preparation. Gregory worked tirelessly, gathering more evidence, organizing documents, preparing the legal strategy. Sarah kept her word and began cooperating with the authorities. She revealed details I hadn't known. She told me how Julian had planned everything before he even met her, how he had researched her, discovered she was the only daughter of a widow with property, how he had deliberately approached her, faking a chance encounter in a coffee shop. Everything had been meticulously calculated. She also revealed that Julian had massive gambling debts. He owed over $200,000 to dangerous people. He needed money fast, and the estate was his ticket out. He planned to sell the property, pocket the money, pay his debts, and disappear, leaving Sarah behind. She had never been part of his future, just a disposable tool. When Sarah discovered this, she finally opened her eyes to the reality of the man she had married. The preliminary hearing took place a month after my escape from the estate. I had to testify. It was one of the hardest experiences of my life. Being in that room full of strangers, with Julian sitting just a few feet away, looking at me with pure hatred in his eyes. But I held firm. I told my story from the beginning. My father's death, the trust I placed in Julian, the papers he made me sign without my fully understanding what they meant, the threats, the humiliation, the forced labor. I spoke in a clear voice, though inside I was trembling like a leaf in the wind. Julian's lawyer tried to discredit me. He suggested I was senile, that I didn't remember things correctly, that I had signed the documents voluntarily and was now regretting it. But then Gregory presented the recordings. The courtroom filled with Julian's voice, admitting to the fraud, laughing at my naivete, bragging about how he had tricked me. The judge's face hardened with every word. When the playback finished, Julian's lawyer had no arguments left. The evidence was irrefutable. Sarah testified, too. She spoke about how Julian had manipulated her, how he had promised her a life of luxury if she helped with his plan. She admitted her involvement without trying to minimize her guilt. She said she had acted out of greed, out of resentment for a life she considered mediocre. She cried while she spoke, but she didn't ask for pity. She just told the truth. I saw Julian glaring at her with contempt from his seat. To him, she was now a traitor. But to me, she was starting to become something different. I hadn't forgiven her yet. Maybe I never would completely. But I could see she was trying to do the right thing, even if it was far too late. The judge listened to all the testimony, reviewed all the evidence, and at the end of the hearing, made his decision. Based on the evidence presented, he declared in a solemn voice, "I find sufficient cause to proceed with criminal charges against Mr. Julian Hayes for fraud, misappropriation, forgery, and extortion, The defendant will remain in custody without bail due to flight risk. Furthermore, he ordered an immediate and total freeze on all assets related to the disputed property until the corresponding civil case was resolved. I felt an enormous weight lift from my shoulders. It was only the first step, but it was a crucial one. After the hearing, Gregory explained what came next. "Now comes the civil trial," he said, "to officially recover the property. But with all the evidence we have, and with Sarah's testimony, it's almost certain we'll win. Julian has already lost. It's just a matter of time." I asked him how long it would take. He shrugged. "Maybe 3 or 4 months," he replied. "The legal system isn't fast, but we'll get to the end eventually." I could wait 3 or 4 months. I had waited 65 years for peace. A few more months meant nothing. During that time, I stayed in the cabin. Gregory visited me regularly, bringing news on the case's progress. Julian tried several desperate tactics. His lawyer filed motions trying to suppress the recordings, arguing they had been obtained without consent. But the judge rejected them all. In cases of fraud and extortion, the judge explained, victims have a right to document the threats and confessions of their aggressors. The recordings are admissible. One afternoon, I received an unexpected call. It was Sarah. Her trial had been held separately, and thanks to her cooperation, she had received a sentence of 2 years probation plus community service. She wasn't going to prison. "Mom," she said when I answered the phone, "they just gave me my sentence. I'm getting out." I felt mixed emotions. Relief that she wouldn't spend years in jail. Uncertainty about what this meant for our relationship. "I'd like to see you," she continued, "if you want to see me. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want to start rebuilding what I destroyed." I told her I needed time to think. She understood. "I know, Mom," she replied. "Take all the time you need. I just wanted you to know that I'm truly sorry, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to prove it." The civil trial finally arrived, 4 months after the preliminary hearing. It was shorter than I expected. Gregory presented mountains of evidence. The forged documents, the recordings, Sarah's testimony, Julian's criminal record. Julian's lawyer could barely mount a defense. He argued technicalities, minor details, but nothing substantial. The judge listened to both sides for 2 days. Then he took a week to deliberate. When we returned to hear the verdict, I felt like my heart was going to beat out of my chest. The judge entered. We all stood. He sat, reviewed his notes, and began to speak. After careful review of all the evidence presented, he said, "I have reached the conclusion that Mr. Julian Hayes obtained the property from Miss Eleanor through fraud, coercion, and forgery of documents. The powers of attorney he used were obtained under false pretenses, and the property transfers based on those powers are therefore null and void." He paused and looked directly at me. "Therefore, I order that the property known as Ridgeview Farm be immediately and fully returned to its rightful owner, Miss Eleanor. Furthermore, Mr. Hayes shall pay damages in the amount of $100,000 for the emotional distress caused, as well as all legal costs of this process." Tears began to roll down my cheeks before I could stop them. I had done it. I had gotten my estate back, my home, my father's legacy. Gregory squeezed my shoulder, a huge smile on his face. "We did it, Eleanor," he whispered. "We did it." I looked over at Julian. His face was red with rage. He tried to get up from his seat as if to protest, but the guards restrained him. "This isn't over," he yelled as they dragged him from the courtroom. "You'll regret this, you stupid old woman." But his words didn't affect me anymore. He had no more power over me. I left the courthouse feeling lighter than I had in months. The sun was shining brightly that day, and the fresh air filled my lungs with a sense of renewal. Gregory walked beside me, smiling proudly. "I know your father would be happy," he said, looking at me warmly. "You fought for what was yours, and you won." I thanked him again for everything he had done for me. "I'd be lost without you, Gregory," I said sincerely. "I don't know how to repay you." He shook his head. "Seeing justice served is payment enough," he replied. "Besides, now comes the best part. Getting your home back." The legal paperwork to physically reclaim the property took another 2 weeks. During that time, Julian was transferred to prison to serve his 8-year sentence for fraud and forgery. I learned that his creditors, The men he owed gambling money to were also looking for him. His life was completely destroyed. Part of me felt sorry for him, but it was a very small part. He had chosen his path, and now he was paying the consequences. The day I finally returned to the estate was bittersweet. Gregory accompanied me. When the car stopped in front of the main gate, I sat for a few moments, just looking at the house. It looked the same as always, but everything was different. This was no longer the house where I had lived as a prisoner. It was my home again. I got out of the car slowly and walked to the entrance. The keys trembled in my hands as I opened the door. Inside, everything was a mess. Julian had left his belongings scattered everywhere. Empty liquor bottles, dirty clothes, crumpled documents. Sarah had collected her things days before, but she hadn't cleaned anything. I walked from room to room, feeling a mix of sadness and determination. This house had seen so much pain, so much betrayal, but it had also witnessed happy moments, laughter, and love. And it would again. I spent the next few days cleaning. I threw out everything that belonged to Julian. His clothes, his papers, his memories. I scrubbed every surface, washed every window, swept every corner. I wanted to erase any trace of his presence. Gregory helped me, bringing boxes to pack up things I would donate. As we worked, we talked about everything. About my father, about the old days, about my plans for the future. One afternoon, while I was organizing the kitchen, I heard a car approaching. I looked out the window and saw Sarah getting out of a taxi. My heart sped up. I hadn't seen her since the trial. I went out onto the porch, and we stood there, looking at each other, not knowing what to say. Finally, she broke the silence. "I came to help," she said softly. "If you'll let me, I don't expect anything in return. I just want to help." I watched her for a long time. I saw sincerity in her eyes, but I also saw the weight of the guilt she carried. "Okay," I said finally, "you can help." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Mom," she whispered. We worked together in silence for hours. She cleaned, I organized. We didn't talk much at first. The air between us was thick with unsaid things, with wounds that were still raw. But gradually, as the hours passed, we began to talk. Small conversations about where to put things, about what to throw away and what to keep. Nothing deep, not yet, but it was a start. As evening fell, Sarah made coffee. We sat on the porch, just as we used to before everything fell apart. The silence wasn't so uncomfortable anymore. "Mom," she said, finally breaking the quiet, "I can never give you back the time I stole or erase the pain I caused you. But I want you to know that I regret what I did every single day. Every day. I wish I could go back and make different choices." I looked at her without saying anything. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," she continued, "but I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to earn it. I'm going to show you that I can be the daughter I always should have been." I told her that forgiveness wouldn't come overnight, that I needed time, that I needed to see her change, really change, not just with words, but with actions. She understood. "I'll work every day to show you," she promised. And so began a slow, painful process of rebuilding. Sarah came to the estate several times a week. She helped with the chores, and we talked, little by little. We weren't what we were before. Maybe we never would be. But we were building something new, something based on honesty, on responsibility, on acknowledging the harm that was done. I hired Edward back, the caretaker Julian had fired. The old man returned with tears of joy. "Miss Eleanor," he said, hugging me, "I knew you'd be back. I knew you'd get your land back." His presence comforted me. He knew the estate better than anyone, and together we began to restore it, to bring back the life it once had. The fields began to flourish again. The fences were mended. The stables were cleaned. Little by little, the estate regained its splendor. And I felt myself being reborn, too. The wrinkles on my face seemed less deep. My steps were firmer. I had survived the most terrible storm of my life and come out victorious. Not without scars, but stronger. The nights no longer filled me with fear, but with peace. I slept in my own bed, in my own house, fearing no one, and that was worth more than any amount of money. The months passed, and life on the estate found a new rhythm. Every morning, I woke to the crowing of the roosters and the smell of coffee I brewed in the kitchen, which was mine again. Edward arrived early to tend to the animals and check the fences. I spent my mornings in the gardens my father had planted, pruning flowers, watering plants, feeling the earth under my hands. That connection with nature healed me in ways words couldn't explain. Sarah kept her promise. She came regularly, and we worked together, sometimes in silence, sometimes chatting about simple things. We never talked about Julian. That chapter was closed, and neither of us wanted to reopen it. Instead, we talked about the present and the future. She had gotten a job at a store in town. It didn't pay much, but it was honest work, and it gave her dignity. She would tell me about her days, about the customers, about her coworkers. I listened without judgment, watching her slowly transform into someone different. One afternoon, while we were making dinner together, Sarah asked me a question that took me by surprise. "Mom, do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me completely?" I stopped chopping vegetables and looked at her. Her face showed true vulnerability. I thought carefully before answering. "I don't know, Sarah," I said honestly. "Forgiveness isn't something I can force. It comes when it comes. But what I can tell you is that I see your effort. I see you're trying to change, to be better, and that means something to me." She nodded, tears shining in her eyes. "That's enough for now," she whispered. "It's more than I deserve." Gregory still visited occasionally. He'd bring documents that needed my signature, updates on minor legal matters, or sometimes just come for coffee and conversation. I had become more than just his client. We were friends, united by the memory of my father and the battle we had fought together. One afternoon, he brought news about Julian. He received more charges, he said. Apparently, he scammed 2 other women in different states. The authorities are consolidating all the cases. He'll probably never get out of prison. I nodded, not feeling anything particular. Julian was already part of the past, a shadow fading with each passing day. "May he rest in peace," I said simply. Gregory nodded. "You've found real peace, Eleanor," he observed. "That's clear. Not many people who've been through what you have managed that." I smiled at him. "I chose peace," I replied. "I could have chosen resentment, bitterness, but that would have only poisoned me. I preferred to heal." The estate began to generate income again. I sold part of the corn and bean harvest that Edward had cultivated. It wasn't much money, but it was enough to maintain the property and live with dignity. I also started renting out 2 of the bedrooms to travelers looking for a quiet place to stay. The estate was in a beautiful location, and word soon spread. Tourists came looking to escape the noise of the city. I welcomed them warmly, made them home-cooked meals, and told them stories about the region. Some stayed just one night, others a week. They all left with smiles and promises to return. One family, in particular, moved me deeply. They were a young couple with a 5-year-old girl. The little girl's name was Sophia, and she reminded me of Sarah when she was little. She had that same crystal laugh, that same endless curiosity. Sophia spent hours following me around the estate, asking 1,000 questions about the flowers, the animals, the mountains. Her parents thanked me for my patience with her, but I was the one who should be thanking them. That child gave me back something I thought I had lost forever: the ability to enjoy childhood innocence without feeling pain. The day the family left, Sophia hugged me tightly. "I'm going to miss you, Grandma Eleanor," she said. The term grandma touched my heart. She wasn't my granddaughter, but in that moment, I felt that pure love that only children can inspire. I promised her she would always be welcome at the estate. Her family returned 2 months later, and then again 3 months after that. They became regular visitors, and I looked forward to their visits with joy. Sarah met Sophia on one of those visits. I watched my daughter watch the little girl play, saw her expression soften. After the family retired to their room, Sarah told me, "Mom, one day I'd like to have children, but I'm afraid I won't know how to be a good mother, that I'll make the same mistakes." I looked at her with tenderness. "We all make mistakes, Sarah," I replied. "The important thing is to learn from them. You've learned more in these past few months than many people learn in a lifetime. When the time comes, you'll be a good mother, because you know the value of what can be lost." The seasons changed. Winter arrived with its cold nights and foggy mornings. I'd light the fireplace at night and sit knitting or reading. Sometimes Sarah would stay over, and we'd sit together in front of the fire, sharing the comfortable silence that only exists between people who have weathered storms together. We didn't talk much in those moments. It wasn't necessary. Our mutual presence was enough. One night, as the fire crackled, Sarah said, "Mom, thank you for giving me a second chance. Not many people would have." I looked at her and saw the woman she was becoming. A more humble, more aware, more human woman. "I didn't just do it for you," I said softly. "I did it for me, too, because holding on to resentment would have only poisoned me. I chose to heal, and part of that healing included giving you the space to heal, too." She nodded, wiping away the tears rolling down her cheeks. Spring arrived, bringing new beginnings with it. The trees bloomed, the birds returned, and the land filled with vibrant colors. I hired 2 young workers from town to help with the heavier labor on the estate. They were orphaned brothers who needed work. I gave them a job, a home, and food. They worked hard, with gratitude and dedication. Seeing the estate become a place full of life, honest work, and good people filled me with deep satisfaction. I turned 66 in the spring. Sarah organized a small celebration. She invited Gregory, Edward, and the 2 brothers who worked with me. She made my favorite meal: green enchiladas, rice, and beans. There was a simple cake with candles. When I blew out the candles, I closed my eyes and made a wish. I didn't wish for riches or youth. I wished for continued peace, for the health to keep enjoying my land, and for the strength to one day forgive completely. Life continued its calm course on the estate. Guests kept coming, leaving good reviews online, recommending the place to their friends. I soon had to set up a reservation system because there were more requests than I could handle. Sarah helped me manage the bookings, change the sheets, and prepare breakfast for the visitors. We worked well together, each knowing the other's movements, finding a rhythm that worked for us. One morning, a certified letter arrived. It was from a law firm I didn't recognize. I opened it with trembling hands, fearing it was something related to Julian, some last-ditch effort to cause me trouble. But it wasn't that. The letter informed me that Julian had officially and irrevocably renounced any claim to the property. Furthermore, the court had ordered him to pay me the $100,000 in compensation that the judge had ruled. The money was already deposited in an account in my name. I read the letter 3 times, unable to believe it. $100,000. It was a fortune to me. I called Gregory immediately. "Is this real?" I asked. "Or is it some kind of mistake?" He laughed. "It's completely real, Eleanor," he replied. "Julian didn't have that money, but the state seized and sold other properties he had fraudulently acquired in other cases. Part of those funds was allocated to compensate his victims. You are one of them." I hung up the phone and sat in silence, processing the information. That money could change a lot of things. I could make major repairs to the estate, invest in the hospitality business, hire more help. The possibilities were endless. But before making any big decisions, I did something I had been putting off. I went to the cemetery where my father and my husband were buried. I hadn't visited their graves in months. I knelt in front of my father's headstone and cleared away the dry leaves that had gathered. "Dad," I whispered, "I finally got the estate back. The land you built with so much effort is safe, and I'm going to take care of it, just like you asked me to. I promise." I felt a deep peace wash over me, as if his spirit were there, listening, approving. I decided to use part of the money to create something meaningful. I spoke to Sarah about my idea, and she supported it completely. I wanted to establish a small scholarship program for young people from town who wanted to study but didn't have the resources. My father always valued education, even though he himself hadn't had the chance to study much. This would be a way to honor his memory, to ensure his legacy was more than just land and buildings. I contacted the local school and proposed the program. The principal, a kind woman named Mrs. Angela, was thrilled with the idea. "We can identify students with good academic performance who need financial support," she said enthusiastically. "This would change lives, Miss Eleanor." We established an initial fund of $20,000, enough to support 4 students for a year. The scholarship ceremony was held at the school. The 4 selected young people came up to the stage with their families. I saw tears of gratitude in the eyes of their parents, mothers who worked cleaning houses, fathers who labored in the fields. I understood their sacrifices perfectly because I had lived that same life. One of the recipients, a young man named Raphael, approached me after the ceremony. "Thank you, Miss Eleanor," he said, his voice emotional. "This means I can go to college to study engineering. I always dreamed of it, but I thought it was impossible. You made my dream possible." His words filled me with a joy I hadn't felt in a long time. This was more valuable than any amount of money. Knowing I was making a real difference in the lives of these young people gave me a renewed purpose. Sarah was at the ceremony. I saw her discreetly wipe away her tears. Afterward, she told me, "Mom, that's beautiful. I wish I had appreciated the opportunities I had instead of wasting them, feeling sorry for myself." I put my hand on hers. "It's never too late to change course," I replied. "Look at what you're doing now. You're working an honest job. You're rebuilding your life. That's valuable too." With the rest of the money, I made the necessary repairs to the estate. I fixed the roof that leaked during the rainy season. I painted the exterior walls. We renovated the guest bathrooms, installing new showers and fresh tiles. Edward supervised the work, making sure everything was done correctly. The estate looked better than ever. The guests noticed, and the reservations increased. One afternoon, I received an unexpected call. It was Sophia's family, the little girl who had stolen my heart months ago. "Miss Eleanor," her mother said, "we have a somewhat unusual request. We're celebrating Sophia's birthday, and she insists she wants to have it at your estate. She says you're like her grandmother, and she can't imagine her party anywhere else." I felt my heart melt. "Of course," I said, my voice full of emotion. "It would be an honor." We planned the party for the following month. Sarah helped me with the preparations. We decorated the garden with colorful streamers, hung piñatas, and prepared food for all the guests. On the day of the party, more than 20 children arrived with their families. The place was filled with laughter, shouting, joy, and music. Sophia ran to me as soon as she arrived, hugging me tightly. "Thank you, Grandma Eleanor," she squealed. "This is the best party in the world." Watching all those children playing in the gardens, where I had played decades ago, filled me with sweet nostalgia. The estate was once again what it always should have been, a place of life, of joy, of family. Sarah played with the children, chasing them between the trees, laughing freely. It had been so long since I'd seen her laugh like that. I watched her, thinking that maybe we were finally healing, both of us. At the end of the party, when everyone had left and it was just Sarah and me cleaning up, we sat exhausted on the porch. "That was a beautiful day," she said. I nodded. "It was," I replied. There was a comfortable silence. Then Sarah spoke again. "Mom, I think I finally understand what I lost when I conspired against you. I didn't just almost lose this property. I almost lost this." She gestured around, the simple moments, the peace, the ability to enjoy genuine things. I was so obsessed with having more that I didn't value what I already had. I looked at her and saw absolute sincerity in her face. "We all learn at our own pace," I said softly. "The important thing is that you learned." A full year had passed since I got my estate back. A year of healing, of rebuilding, of learning to live again without fear. Spring had returned, bringing new flowers, and with them, the feeling that I had finally come full circle. I sat on the porch one early morning, watching the sun light up the distant mountains. I had a hot cup of coffee in my hands, and the sound of birds filled the air. This was my place. It always had been, and it always would be. Sarah had continued her transformation. She now lived in a small apartment in town, which she rented with her own salary. She insisted on paying her own way, on not depending on me financially. That filled me with pride. She still visited me regularly, but it was different now. She came because she wanted to, not because she had to. Our relationship had become something new. We weren't exactly what we were before, but we were something more solid, more honest. We had learned that true love sometimes needs to break completely to be rebuilt on a stronger foundation. One afternoon, she confessed that she had started going to therapy. I need to understand why I made the decisions I made, she said, looking at me with vulnerability. Why I let ambition destroy what was most important. My therapist is helping me work through that. I told her I thought that was very brave. Recognizing we need help is the first step toward true healing, I replied. She smiled sadly. I wish I had done it sooner, Mom. I wish I had talked to you about my resentment instead of letting it grow into something monstrous. I put my hand on hers. We can't change the past, Sarah, I said, but we can decide how we live from now on. The scholarship program continued to thrive. The original 4 students were excelling in their studies. Raphael, the young man who wanted to study engineering, had won a state-level math competition. He came to tell me the news, his eyes shining with excitement. It's all thanks to you, Miss Eleanor, he said. Without your support, none of this would be possible. I told him the credit was all his, that I had only opened a door, but he was the one who walked through it. I decided to expand the program to include 2 more students the following year. Mrs. Angela was delighted. You are changing lives, Miss Eleanor, she told me. You are leaving a legacy that will last for generations. The estate had become a well-known spot in the region. The online reviews were excellent. People talked about the tranquility of the place, the homemade food, the warmth with which they were received. I had to hire additional help. A young woman named Adriana from town came 3 times a week to help with cleaning and cooking. She was cheerful and hardworking, always singing while she worked. She reminded me of myself when I was young, full of energy and optimism. Edward, though he was now over 70, continued to work on the estate. One day I suggested he retire, that he had worked enough. He looked at me with a smile. Miss Eleanor, he replied, if I stop working, I'll die. This land is my life, just like it's yours. As long as I can move, I'll be here. I understood exactly what he meant. The estate wasn't just a place. It was part of our identity, of who we were. One afternoon, Gregory came to visit me with news. Julian died in prison, he said in a neutral tone. Heart attack. I thought you should know. I received the news without feeling much. Not joy, not sadness. Just an acknowledgement that this chapter was definitively closed. May he rest in peace, I said simply. Gregory nodded. You've found true peace, Eleanor, he observed. That's evident. Not many people who have been through what you have manage that. I smiled at him. I chose peace, I replied. I could have chosen resentment, bitterness, but that would have only destroyed me. I preferred to heal. Sophia and her family had become such regular visitors that I offered them one of the rooms permanently at a reduced rate. They accepted gleefully. Now they spent almost every weekend at the estate. Sophia had grown several inches, and her curiosity hadn't diminished. She followed me everywhere, learning about the plants, the animals, the stars. One night, as we were watching the starry sky together, she asked me, Grandma Eleanor, why do the stars shine? I explained that they were suns very far away and that their light traveled for years to reach us. She processed the information seriously. So, she added, when we see a star, we're seeing the past. Exactly, I replied, impressed by her understanding. She smiled. Like your memories of your dad. He's not here anymore, but his light still shines in you. That little girl's words moved me deeply. She was right. My father was still alive in every corner of this estate, in every tree he had planted, in every lesson he had taught me. And now I was passing that light on to others, to Sarah, to the scholarship students, to every person who stepped onto this land and took a piece of its peace with them. The day came when Sarah asked if I could forgive her completely. We were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset. Mom, she said, her voice trembling, I know I've changed. I know I'm trying to be better. But I need to know if you can ever truly forgive me, if we can be mother and daughter again, completely. I looked at her for a long time. I saw in her eyes years of regret, of hard work, of genuine transformation. I have forgiven you, Sarah, I said softly. Maybe I did it months ago and didn't realize it. Forgiveness didn't come like a lightning bolt. It came little by little, with every visit, with every proof that you had really changed. She began to cry. I put my arm around her shoulders. We aren't who we were before, I continued, and that's okay. We are something new. Something built from ashes, but stronger because of it. That night, after Sarah left, I stayed alone on the porch. The full moon illuminated the silver, silent fields. I thought about the entire journey. The humiliation, the pain, the fight, but also the victory, the healing, the rebirth. I had lost a lot in the process. I had lost my innocence, my naivete, my ability to trust blindly. But I had gained something more valuable. I had gained strength, wisdom, and a deep understanding of my own worth. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. The air smelled of damp earth, of night-blooming flowers, of home. This was my place. It always had been, and it always would be. I hadn't just inherited it. I had defended it. I had fought for it. I had chosen to stay when all seemed lost. The estate was no longer just my father's legacy. It was my own legacy. And one day, when I was gone, it would be the legacy of all those whose lives I had touched. I opened my eyes and looked at the stars. They shone brightly, reminding me that even in the deepest darkness, there is always light. I smiled. I had passed through my own darkness, and I had found my light, and that light would continue to shine long after I was gone. That thought filled me with a peace that no material wealth could ever buy. I stood up and went inside the house. Tomorrow would be another day, full of possibilities, and I would be ready for it.